Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mythic Plus guide for every single dungeon in Season 2 of The War Within. We'll go to every single important boss and trash mechanic in all of the dungeons this season. And since a lot of time and effort went into the creation of this video, if you like it or you find it useful, please consider using the buttons below. You know what to do. Now, without further ado, let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Motherlode Mythic Plus Dungeon Guide for Season 2 in The War Within, including all the changes introduced for this iteration of the dungeon. We're going to go over all important boss and trash mechanics, starting with the first area where you're going to encounter the refreshment vendors. Make sure to kick their Ice Prizer, as this one does damage and also stuns the target if it goes off, which is magic dispellable, but it's better if it doesn't happen. And beware of the adult ducks. They're going to target somebody, charge him, do a bunch of damage and knock them up. And they also do inhale vapors, which enrages them, increasing their melee attack speed, so if you can shoot them, that's always best. The big mechanized peacekeepers are going to cast charge shield on themselves, it's not interruptible, and after that their melee attacks start to cast chain lightnings to your teammates, doing heavy AoE damage, and then they're going to cast tear gas, which summons green puddles on the ground. You need to dodge them, and then stay out of them until they expire. The next dangerous mob is the Hired Assassin, which is going to channel Fan of Knives. This one does heavy AoE damage, it's not interruptible, but you need to CC or stun it to prevent the damage. And then always save an interrupt for their Toxic Blades cast, which is going to apply a dot to everyone in your party if you let it to go off. You're also going to encounter the little mech jockeys, which are going to run to a nearby deactivated peacekeeper once you drop them low, and they're going to try and activate it. Make sure to stun or CC them, as this is not interruptible, but if they succeed, you're going to have to fight a fully activated mechanized peacekeeper, and you definitely don't want to do that. The first boss is the Coin Pummeler, who is going to cast Static Pulse. This one knocks everyone back, does a bunch of damage, and leaves an 8-second dot on everyone. After that, he just drops coins around the room. Make sure to not get hit by them and move the boss away. At 100 energy, he casts Coin Magnet and sucks all the coins around him, buffing him, so you want to make sure that he is in an open, clear area. He's also going to summon bombs around the room. You want to get behind them and kick them towards the boss to hit him. They're going to increase the damage that he takes for 15 seconds, but if you fail to do so, they're going to explode and do damage to you. And of course, he has a big frontal that you need to dodge. In the second area, you're going to see some Wanton Sappers, which explode in a big circle when they die, so make sure to dodge that. Save an interrupt for the Earthshapers, which are going to try and cast Rock Lance. But the most dangerous mob here is the Azerite Extractor. The rapid extraction does heavy AoE damage and puts a lot of circles on the ground that you need to dodge. This mob also has a puncture. This is a tank buster that also leaves a bleed, so be careful when you pull those. You will also fight some Stone Furies. Make sure to interrupt their Tectonic Barrier. This is not only an absorb shield, but it's also going to prevent you from interrupting their next cast, which is a huge AoE called Furious Quake, pulsing AoE damage as well as a slowdown effect that you definitely want to interrupt. Just before the second boss, you're also going to fight a mini boss called Taskmaster Ascari. He's going to charge a person and do a massive slam, get out of the big orange circle, and watch your tank because he does a stacking bleed on them. He's also going to buff himself with a stacking and rage buff called Overtime. So the longer he's alive, the more damage your tank is going to take because of the stacking bleed and the stacking buff. Kill him and you're at the second boss, Azerok. Make sure to dodge his big frontal cone at all times. And make sure to run away from the ads that are going to fixate a random player, so try to CC them and slow them down as much as you can. He also has a Resonant Quake cast, which does AoE damage and slows everyone for 6 seconds, making it even harder to run away from the ads. And killing the ads is not going to help you a lot because he just summons more after they die. So you're pretty much guaranteed to have 2 at all times. However, once he casts Azerite Infusion and channels for 4 seconds at one of the ads, which by the way is going to heal that ad back up to 100%, You want to switch and focus it down as quickly as possible because it is now empowered and it's doing pulsing AoE damage. However, it is also taking 200% increased damage itself. So kill it as quickly as possible, rinse, repeat, and on to the next part. Here you're gonna fight the Venture Co-Alchemists who are going to cast Caustic Compound. You wanna interrupt that as it does initial damage but also leaves a nasty dot on the target. They also have one more cast called Transmute Enemy to Goo that just turns the person into a blob, making them unable to cast abilities for 10 seconds, so make sure to interrupt this one as well. The Masterminds are going to cast Brainstorm that summons 3 little circles that turn into tornadoes doing damage and silencing everyone inside, so make sure to dodge those. And be careful with their Mind Lash ability, which is a 4-second channel that does damage to random targets around them. Some of the pack also have weapon testers that do AoE damage and have a frontal, and after you navigate your way through the packs here, you get to the third boss. Rixa Fluxflame is going to use big circles to deny huge area from the ground around her. And then she's going to use Azerite Catalyst. She targets a player and they drop even more big circles that deny even more area in the arena. She's then going to target a player with Propellant Blast. That's a big frontal cone that pushes them back, does a bunch of damage, but also pushes back these circles on the ground. So try to clean around if you're targeted, but run away if you're not. And that's pretty much it. She's supposed to put a magic dispellable dot onto 3 targets, but that was not present on the PTR, so hopefully it doesn't get into the live servers as well. In the last area, you're gonna fight some Ordnance Specialists which do Artillery Barrage, big orange circles that you need to dodge, a lot of them, and then you have the big War Machines which are going to channel Charged Shot for 4 seconds, doing AoE damage to everyone around them. They're also going to summon mines which are present in the area even without being summoned. They fixate a player. If they reach them, they're gonna explode for a lot of damage, so make sure to slow them down and CC them while DPSing them down. If you navigate your way through the minefield, you'll be at the last boss, Mogu Razdunk. While you fight him, there's gonna be drones flying above the battlefield and occasionally shooting a lot of orange swirlies on the ground. You can of course try to dodge them, but also keeping eye on those drones so you know where the swirlies are gonna be coming from helps a lot. The boss himself is going to target a player with a homing missile that is going to chase you and eventually hit you, doing a lot of damage and leaving a dot on the player that got hit. Make sure to run this away from everybody else so you're the only person in the big orange circle to prevent other players from taking damage. The boss is also going to cast Gatling Gun. This is a frontal, and while he's channeling that, he's also spinning around in a full circle, so make sure not to get hit. At about 50%, he becomes immune to damage, starts flying, and summons down 3 pillars which land in big orange circles that you need to dodge. He's then going to target a random player with a red arrow. You need to run next to a pillar and wait for him to come over you and try to smack you. At this point, you move away from the circle and the pillar removes a stack from his immune shield. You need to do this 3 times to end this phase. While you're baiting him to the pillars, he also summons 2 Sky Scorcher adds. Focus them down as the boss is immune to damage anyway, and they're gonna be buster shotting random players for a bunch of damage. Ideally, you want to kill them before the boss lands, and after that, the fight continues the same way as it was in phase 1 until you kill the boss. That's gonna be all for this Motherlode Mythic Plus guide, but if you want to find more Mythic Plus content for Season 2 in the War Within, check out this channel. I'll see you in the next video. Now get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mechagon Workshop Mythic Plus Dungeon Guide for Season 2 in the War Within, including the most recent changes for this iteration of the dungeon. We'll be going through all important boss and trash mechanics, and at the start you have to fight several packs of different tonks. The rocket ones are going to shoot swirlies on the ground, simply dodge those, and always save an interrupt for the bomb tonks, which are going to try and detonate, doing huge AoE damage to your whole team. You have to clear the whole arena at the start in order to summon the Tussle Tonks, which is the first boss. You have to kill them at the same time in order for them not to enrange, and both of them have 3 abilities. The big guy is going to pummel your tank, doing damage in a circle around them, so make sure to stay out of that. And then he's going to channel Ground Pound, which does AoE damage to everyone for 4 seconds. Upon reaching 100% energy, he buffs himself with platinum plating, which reduces the damage taken by 33%, and in order to remove that, you have to bait him under the hammers near the edges of the arena, which is going to smack them and remove the buff. Of course, make sure he's the only one standing in the impact area. The tank is going to randomly charge at people and knock them back up. Make sure you don't land on the mines that he's also going to be dropping throughout the fight, as they do a lot of damage. At 100 energy, he does a big frontal charge. Make sure to dodge that and preferably bait it close to the other boss because he's going to hit a wall and get stunned for 5 seconds at that location. And last but not least, there's gonna be soul blades zooming through the cracks of the arena throughout the whole fight, so make sure to stay in solid ground and dodge those as well. In the next area, you're gonna fight the waste processing units, which are going to cast Mega Drill. This is a channel that does AoE damage to everyone in your party, and their Puncture Tank Buster also leaves a bleed on their target. The big metal slimes are going to cast Corrosive Gunk, which does AoE damage to 3 people in your party and puts a huge healing absorb shield on them. They also put a disease on your tank that reduces their haste, so if you can dispel it, definitely do so. Just before the boss, you have to fight several junkyard dogs. They're going to cast Fiery Jaws, that used to be uninterruptible but CCable cast, which is now instant. And it's going to apply a dot to a random target, which stacks, but luckily it's dispellable. Kill all the dogs and you'd be at the second boss, Cujo. During the fight, boxes are going to drop from the sky. You wanna dodge the impact area, but once they land, and he starts casting venting flames, you wanna hide behind them to avoid the AoE damage that is certainly going to kill you. After the channel ends, you wanna move away from the box as it's eventually going to explode and kill everybody in a small circle. He's going to put a huge dot debuff on your tank that you can dispel, and doing so does huge AoE damage to everyone in your party, so make sure they're topped off before that. After that, a new box is going to drop, and you want to move away from it initially because he's going to target 3 people with Explosive Leap. Big orange circles that you want to spread, he's going to jump to every circle and do damage to the person inside. And you want to move away from the box because if the box is inside of those circles, it's going to blow up and then you're going to die once he casts the venting flames because you have no place to hide. They will destroy the old boxes, and from this point on, it's rinse and repeat. After that boss, you need to move on a moving belt and avoid exploding fire vents that will one-shot you, but there's a button at the end of the ramp that you can press in order to stop them. You then reach a small arena where you fight 3 waves of mobs. The first one includes the Mechagon Tinkerers, interrupt their Gigas La Loop, and try to bait the squirrels that they summon away from the main group as they explode in a big blue circle that you need to move out from. In the second wave, you're going to fight 3 defensive bots. They're going to cast Arcing Zap at players. This is some initial damage with a heavy dot after that, which is dispelled by magic. So try to keep up with these if you can. And then the bot labeled with number 3 is going to cast Short Out. This is a 3-second channeled AoE that does heavy damage to everyone in your party. Defeat these and you get to fight one big robot called Blastatron. He's constantly going to fire rockets out of his butt, doing random damage to players in your party. And he's also going to be casting Sonic Pulse. This is a frontal that you need to dodge as it does a lot of damage and it also silences. At 100 energy, he starts casting Capacitor Discharge. Stay close and run through him in order to get to the quadrant that is currently safe. It's going to change every few seconds, so you have to keep moving and healing through the rockets which are still raining from the sky. Defeat him and you have to hide in the steam in order to avoid alarm bots in the next area. If they see you, you start from the beginning, so be careful. If you make it through, you get to fight one more pack which introduces 2 new mobs. Interrupt the Mechanics Tune-Up ability, as this is an 8-second channel that actually heals. And after that, move out all the mobs from the yellow shield that the defenders are going to summon. This one reduces the damage to everyone inside by 75%, so you can actually go in and take advantage of that as soon as you move the mobs out. The next boss is Machinist Sparkflux, and although he's the main target, every time he summons plants on the edges of the arena, you have to switch to them and kill them quickly because they focus a target and do a lot of single target damage to them. At 100% energy, he summons beams in the middle of the room that rotate around, so move along with them. And beams or not, you have to be dodging 3 different things throughout the fight at all times. Occasionally he's going to cast a big blue circle that disorients, so move out of that. More and more cogwheels are going to be flying into random directions across the room, so keep an eye out for them. And there's gonna be fire swirlies around the areas where you killed some of the flowers. So try to move the boss away, but beware of them while you're going around the circle, dodging the beams. Navigate your way through that chaos and DPS the boss down to move to the next part. After that, you have to fight 2 spider tanks, not necessarily both at the same time, in order to jump to the last platform. They have the Sonic Pulse Fronto, which does damage and silences, and they're gonna be firing rockets around doing AoE damage to everyone in your party. After you kill them, the last platform has different combinations of all the mobs that we have seen so far, so enjoy those, and if you manage to get through them, you'll be at the last boss. In phase 1, King Mechagon is going to summon 4 plasma orbs, which are occasionally going to reposition in your blue circles. Stay away from them and don't be on the way of the blue arrows. He's also going to mark a player with a red arrow and shoot a fronto on them. Stay away, and the player is going to take a lot of initial damage and then have a 20-second dot on them after that. There's one more mechanic. Takeoff, he jumps into the air and fixates a player, chasing them with a blue beam that you need to stay away from unless you wanna die. That lasts for 6 seconds and everybody's taking AoE damage while this period lasts. Phase 1 ends when you kill that machine, you're then stunned, the boss jumps into a bigger machine at the edge of the arena, and then you proceed with phase 2. In that phase, the blue orbs are still there, they're still gonna be jumping around, so keep dodging them along with their blue arrows. And at the same time, you wanna spread in a semicircle around the boss, because in this phase, he's going to do 3 frontals one after the other. Every player in the blue line takes damage, a dot, and a debuff that increases the subsequent damage taken from this ability by 100%. So if you get hit twice, you're dead. Best strategy here, if you take the beam, don't move, and let everyone else move out from your line. The extra ability in this phase, he summons a magnet somewhere in the room and sucks everyone in, including the blue orb balls. Of course, that's doing AoE damage for 9 seconds. The further away you are from the magnet, the less damage you're going to take. Rinse and repeat until you kill the boss, or as in this case, until the boss kills you. And that'll be all for the Mechagon Workshop Dungeon Guide, but if you want to find out more Mythic Plus content for Season 2 in the War Within, definitely check out this channel. I'll see you in the next video. Now get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Theater of Pain Mythic Plus guide for Season 2 of the War Within. This guide is going to cover all the important boss and trash mechanics, including the changes that were introduced during the War Within, compared to the last time this dungeon was introduced during Shadowlands. There's a lot of trash in this dungeon, so if you can skip that first pack, that's great. If not, keep in mind that the contenders are going to charge at people and you would have to constantly interrupt the ritualists. The Bloodhorn after that has a true sight, so you cannot skip him, but make sure to suit his Raging Tantrum because that is a heavy AoE and rage. And if you don't have a suit, you simply have to heal through it. The first boss is 3 mobs that have been changed significantly since Shadowlands. Patron is going to cast Plague Bolts, interrupt as many of these as you can, and beware of his frontal. It's quite wide, and of course, you have to dodge it. Once he reaches 100 energy, he casts Noxious Spores. All players start to drop puddles in green circles at their feet repeatedly, and these puddles stay there for a while, so you might want to try to stack them in order to save some space. Dacia is going to cast Mighty Smash upon reaching 100 energy that does heavy AoE damage to everyone around her and slows them down for 10 seconds, and then she's also going to Mortal Strike your tank, doing damage and reducing the healing that they'll be taking. The last mob is Sateo. He's gonna be casting Necrotic Bolts, interrupt as many of these as you can. And he also has another ability which you cannot interrupt anymore, Withering Touch, which puts a debuff to everyone in your party. You can dispel it, it's magic, and it's doing ticking damage for 12 seconds if you do not. His ability at 100% energy is Searing Death. Green circles around you that do damage to you and everyone around you. Another 12 seconds of pain, this time not dispellable. If you kill one of the bosses before the other 2, they will get a debuff, increasing their damage done by 10% and making them spam their abilities more often. And this one stacks, so you might want to cleave them down equally. Good luck. After that boss kills you, after you kill that boss, you drop down and you have 3 different wings with 3 different bosses, and you can pick which one to go to first. In the Abomination wing, you have to interrupt the spewers at all times because their Withering Discharge Blast not only does AoE damage, but also puts a dot on all the players that reduces the damage and healing that they do. They also jump on distant players, the same thing that the Disgusting Refuses do, and once they die, they explode in green puddles. Make sure to stand outside of those. This area also features bigger mobs. The Diseased Horrors are going to try and cast Meat Shield. Interrupt that. If you fail to do so, the shield is going to absorb all the damage that they'll be taking. They also apply a stacking debuff to your tank that reduces their maximum health, so beware of that. And the big butchers are going to leave a bleed on your tank and try to devour flesh them. Dealing damage and healing, you cannot interrupt this one, but you can CC and stun it. If you have no way to skip them, you might actually have to pull the Rancid gas bags in this area. This mob has a frontal that also hits in a line behind them. It leaves puddles on the ground, which you need to avoid. It might be problematic in the narrow corridors in this wing. And it's also surrounded by a disease cloud, which does sticking damage to everyone in your party every 2 seconds, which might be problematic dealing with. The boss in this wing is called Gorchop. He's going to cast Tenderizing Smash, which pulls everyone towards him in a big circle that you need to run out of. And if you don't want to get yoinked in, you can just stay close to him and just run out of the circle. And at the same time, you have to dodge the meat hooks that drop around the room. There's gaps in the wall that you have to navigate your way through. With the meat hooks, you would get Ad's Code Oozing Leftovers. Stay spread as they're going to jump into players and do AoE damage upon landing. And after you kill them, they leave green puddles on the ground that you have to keep avoiding along with everything else in this room. The boss also casts Hateful Strike, a huge tank buster that does a lot of physical damage. In the next wing, you're going to encounter Shackled Souls. These are going to cast Bind Soul and channel it into players doing ticking damage. Make sure to interrupt or CC them. The big Portal Guardians are going to put curses on players that do ticking damage and increase the shadow damage they're taking. And then, yes, you guessed it, they go into a Soul Storm, which does AoE shadow damage to everyone in your party for a few seconds. They also drop orbs that you need to activate the portals behind them. There are a couple of routes that you can take in order to reach the next boss. And there are better and worse routes, but we're just going to talk about all the possible mobs that you can see on the next platforms. The Bone Magus has a huge shield that you can perch instead of bursting through. They're gonna be casting Grave Spikes. Interrupt as many of those as you can, but always save an interrupt for their big cast. Bone Spear, as it does a lot more damage and also leaves a dot on the player if it goes through. The Soul Binders are similar. Interrupt their Necrotic Bolts as much as you can, but always save an interrupt for their big AoE cast Necrotic Bolt Volley, as it does huge AoE damage to everyone. One of the platforms has a Bone Reaver Huge Skeletal Dragon. This one is going to summon spikes, avoid the green circles on the ground if you don't want to get impaled, and keep dodging them as this is a channeled ability. And he's also going to cast Bone Storm. Don't stand near him because he starts spinning, doing damage to everyone around. The Dark Speakers are going to cast Curse of Desolation on a player, doing ticking damage and leaving purple puddles behind them. If you stay in the puddle, you're going to get feared, which will make it hard to dodge Dead Winds. This is a frontal that is going to just simply push you off of the platform and kill you if you don't dodge it. This mob also casts Spirit Frost, single target damage. Interrupt as many of those as you can. The next boss, Kultarok, is going to summon orbs which are going to orbit around the arena almost at all times, so you have to just keep dodging them. Web of Darkness puts debuffs on 2 players, which does damage in an area around them as well, so keep spread, use defensives and heal through them, as they're not dispellable. Interrupt the Necrotic Bolts that the boss is casting at all times. Make sure to dodge the Necrotic Eruption. This is a frontal that is being cast always on your tank. And his trademark ability is Draw Soul. All the players are marked with green arrows above their heads. They're taking ticking damage for 8 seconds, and after that they drop ads that are going to try and reach the boss. You wanna stack those and AoE them down before they reach the boss, because if they succeed, they explode for a whole bunch of AoE damage. Make sure to CC them and slow them down. After that, everything continues with all the mechanics cycling through. In the last wing, you can find few trash pools. In one of them, there's an ancient captain. Interrupt his demo shout, as that reduces the damage that your party does by 50% if it goes off. You also want to focus him down quickly, because he increases the damage of the mobs around him and reduces the AoE damage they take. And the Arbalest can be quite annoying because they shoot random arrows at people, and they can also put a bleed on them, the Jagged Quarrel, which does a whole ton of damage. The rest of the trash in this wing is mini bosses. The first one does a whirlwind around it and throws sights around the room that start spinning. You need to avoid them, keep in mind that they're moving. And he also does interrupting roar, huge AoE damage that also interrupts spell casting, so be careful. After that, there's a whole bunch of mini bosses that you can encounter. They're different in every instance, but the theme is the same. They have a frontal, they have some kind of a charge, and they all do heavy AoE damage. And then they all have a single target cast to a player that does a whole bunch of damage up front and leaves a nasty dot after that. Most of them you can try to line of sight in the arena here to avoid the damage and the dot, as they usually overlap with other mechanics as well, which could potentially kill you. If you kill all the mini bosses, you're going to fight Xav, who is going to do a brutal combo at your tank, trying to kill him with a lot of physical damage, and he's going to summon a banner that's going to reduce the speed of everyone around it. Whether or not you want to kill it is your choice, but you might need your movement speed when he jumps in the middle and performs 3 random abilities. They could be a frontal, a big circle that you need to run out of, and a smash in a semicircle that denies half of the arena. After that, he sends down 2 players to fight in a PvP combat. Usually it's 2 DPS, but if all the DPS is dead, then who knows, maybe a healer. In any case, you should be wasting no time to fight. The player who has cooldown should quickly kill the other player, at which point both of them are returned upstairs. The winner receives 10% increased damage, the loser 10% decreased damage, and all of that continues until you manage to kill the boss. And that brings us at the end of the dungeon and the last boss, Mordretta. She has a huge tank buster, and then she summons a frontal that she spins around, so make sure to dodge that. She has 2 more abilities that sometimes overlap. She summons a huge rift that does AoE damage and tries to suck everyone in. And then she puts a dot, big green circles around each player that does more damage if you stay close to each other, and summons adds after they expire. The adds are casters, so try to interrupt them, stack them up, and AoE them down as quickly as possible. At 50%, she casts Echoes of Carnage. The fight continues as before, but now there are 2 new mechanics. She summons soldiers in the arena that fight and do big AoE damage in circles around them, simply dodge those. And she also summons ghostly chargers in the edges of the arena that rush forward and kill everyone at their path. Unfortunately, currently the visuals for that are not very good. So you have to keep dodging all of that while the mechanics from phase 1 are still happening, and if you manage to succeed, you've managed to also defeat Theater of Pain. Make sure to check this channel for more Mythic Plus content in Season 2 of The War Within. I'll see you guys there. Now get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mythic Plus Dungeon Guide for the Rookery in Season 2 of The War Within. We'll be covering all important boss and trash mechanics, starting with Quartermaster Koratite, a mini-boss that you have to fight right at the entrance. Beware of his frontal. He shoots out 3 orbs in a direction that's not very easy to see, and after a while they come back, so be careful not to get hit on the way back as well. You want to stay behind him anyway, because he also channels a shield that blocks all attacks in front of him. Make sure to interrupt the lightning bolts from the Thunderers on this platform, and you're on to the next. Here on top of the Thunderers, you also have to fight the Void Riders. They're gonna jump in the air and shoot frontals in several directions, targeting different players, so make sure to dodge those. And they're also going to channel an ability called Localized Storm. This is a 5-second heavy AoE to everyone in your party, so be ready to heal through that. Beware of the Stormrooks. They're going to do a 3-second channel at a target, Energized Barrage, that does a lot of single target damage, so prepare your defensives. And be very careful if you pull Rook Tenders with them because they can empower them through their Lightning Surge cast if you don't interrupt it. You have to clear the whole room before you pull the first boss, but beware of the Thunderers that are channeling on top of a Lightning Bolt. It gives them a huge haste increase buff, and the best strategy is just to purge them on pull, otherwise you're going to run out of interrupts quite quickly. The first boss is Curious. For his first mechanic, he's going to mark all the players with blue circles around them. You need to spread out and make sure you don't overlap them when they hit, because they do a lot of damage. And he also shoots a line of swirlies at each player. Make sure to dodge those, and all of that keeps happening until he hits 100% energy. At this point, he jumps into the middle and summons 4 beams that start rotating around the room, so you need to run along with them. That lasts for 15 seconds, everybody's taking ticking damage, and everybody's also summoning swirlies at their feet, so you need to keep moving up front without getting hit. After that phase is over, he marks a player with a huge circle where he dashes and lands. Make sure you're outside of it, and then it's rinse and repeat as you're back to the mechanics from phase 1. The next area introduces few new mobs. The oracles are going to cast void bolts, interrupt those, and save a stun or other kind of CC for their seeping corruption cast, as this one is not interruptible, but if it goes through, it puts a curse on a target. That does a lot of damage, and if you don't have a curse to spell, yeah. You're also going to fight some Void Crushers. They're going to leap onto a random target and do some damage on small impact areas, so stay spread when you fight those. And you also have to fight several Void Diffusers. They're going to cast Attracting Shadows, which sucks everybody in, doing AoE damage, and at the same time they're going to target somebody and cast Arcing Void. This is a Chain Lightning ability. The first target is going to take unavoidable damage, and if you spread around, there's gonna be no second target. After you do a double pull of these, you'll be at the second boss, but first you have to kill a few mobs that explode on that, so make sure you don't stay in the circles. And you'll be at the second boss, Stormguard Goran. He's going to cast Chaotic Corruption, which puts a debuff on a player with 4 charges. They're gonna be taking ticking damage for 5 seconds. After that, the debuff loses a charge and jumps to the nearest player. If you get it on you at some point, you get vulnerable and you take double damage from it if you get it again in the next 10 seconds. So be very careful how you're throwing this in between your teammates, and the boss has a couple of other mechanics. When he casts Crush Reality, he jumps to a player's location, does a bunch of AoE damage, and leaves a puddle on the ground, so preferably you wanna bait this to the edges of the room. There's also Void Pillars that shoot out from the landing location, make sure to dodge those. And his other ability is called Dark Gravity. He starts doing pulsing AoE damage and tries to suck everyone into a huge circle around him that explodes for a whole bunch of damage, so make sure you're outside of it. Manage those 2 abilities, juggle the debuff correctly, and you'll be on to the next part. Here you have to fight Void Ascendants. They're gonna be casting Void Bolts, interrupt as many as you can, and be ready for their Feasting Void cast. That puts a magic debuff on everyone. That's a heavy dot that keeps sticking until you dispel it, or until you heal through the Heal Absorb shield that's also being placed there. They're also going to cast Umbra Wave. Those are Void Bolts that shoot out from the mob, so keep dodging them until they stop casting. You also have to fight several of the big Voidstone mobs, which are going to cast Void Extraction. This is going to give them a buff, increasing their damage for every mob around them or every player that's nearby, and everybody else, including the players, gets a debuff that reduces their damage down by 5%. This thing stacks. So try to pull not too many mobs on top of them, because when they get low, they cast Unleash Darkness. This is a channel that does pulsing AoE and shoots out swirlies around them. And if they manage to get too many stacks, that thing hurts a lot, so you wanna DPS them down as quickly as possible. You have to clear the platforms at the end to summon the last boss, the Voidstone Monstrosity. The tank buster is called Oblivion Wave. This is a huge slow-moving frontal, so stay on the side. And Unleash Corruption is going to mark 2 players with ticking dots. They last for 15 seconds. They are magic dispellable, but once you remove them, they leave a puddle on the ground, so try to stack them on the side. The main mechanic is no upheaval. He knocks everybody back, does AoE damage, summons a lot of swirlies on the ground, and marks players with blue circles. The players have 9 seconds to move and find 3 fragments around the arena. The blue circles are going to explode and destroy them. And if you fail to do so, they're going to turn into ads that do a lot of pulsing AoE damage, and yeah, it's bad. The boss himself has an absorb shield for 20% of his maximum health, and once you DPS through it, he gets stunned for 20 seconds and takes 100% increased damage. Pop your cooldowns and do as much damage as you can because he's not doing any mechanics, and after those 20 seconds are over, he's going to get a new shield that you have to DPS through before you can damage him again. All of that keeps repeating until you kill the boss. Make sure there's always someone in melee, otherwise he starts pulsing AoE, and once you manage to do that, you'll be done with the Rookery. Check the rest of the dungeon guides and more Mythic Plus content for Season 2 in the War Within on this channel. I'll see you guys there. Now get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Priory of the Sacred Flame Mythic Plus guide for Season 2 in the War Within. In the first area, you're gonna be fighting some Marathi footmen that are going to put a shield around themselves, reducing the damage to everyone inside, but if you knock or stun them, now they take increased damage. The Arathi Knights are going to cast Disruptive Shout that does AoE damage and also interrupts if you're casting, so be careful. And they're also going to put nasty 18 seconds long Impale Bleeds on random targets, so be prepared to use defensives and heal those people up. The sharpshooters are going to do damage to random targets, and they're also going to jump away and drop cold drops. Avoid the traps on the ground as they're going to root you and do yet another bleed on their target. Some of the packs are going to have Devout Priests, which are going to try and cast Greater Heal when targets around them are low. Make sure to interrupt that. The rest of the time they'll be spamming Holy Smites, which are also interruptible. The Fanatical Conjurers are also casters that are going to try and do single target damage with their Fireball, also interruptible. And be careful when they start channeling Flame Strike, big circle on the ground that you need to move out from before it explodes. On the other side, there's also some War Lynxes. They're going to jump to a target and leave a nasty bleed on it. Heal up or CC them if you can. And then you have the Light Spawns. Those elementals are going to channel Purification, which is a lot of single target damage to the target, and that one is not interruptible. And then once they're about to die, they explode into a big yellow circle that will do a lot of damage to your party, but it will also heal all the mobs that are still inside, so you want to make sure that they're the only ones in that circle once they explode. That first area also features 3 lieutenant mobs. After you kill one of them, you summon one of the mini-bosses that surround the first boss later on. There's no point killing all 3 though, because the last mini-boss is always going to remain next to the first boss and you have to find them together. So you only have to pick 2 of the lieutenants, and the first one is Guard Captain Suleiman. He's going to do a Thunderclap that does AoE damage and slows everybody down, and he's also going to shield slam your tank doing single target damage. You kill him and he summons Surgeon Chainmail. She's going to cast Lingering Strike and jump to a player. When she lands, she puts a nasty bleed on everyone in a small area. Make sure to pre-move and avoid that because the bleed is 18 seconds long, and when she casts her Brutal Smash, make sure to move out of the circle that does a lot of damage and also stuns. If you go to the left, you will find a High Priestess that's going to cast a lot of smites, interrupt as many of those as you can, and beware of her Reflective Shield. This is an absorb that also reflects 70% of the damage back to the attacker. So if your DPS are monkeys, they can easily kill themselves trying to burst through that shield. Killing her summons a mage called Tanner Duomo, who's going to cast a lot of fireballs, interrupt as many of these as you can, but always save an interrupt for their Cinder Blast cast. This one does even more single target damage, stuns the target and leaves a dot on them, so make sure it doesn't go off. They're also gonna be casting Ember Storm, a lot of fire swirlies on the ground for you to avoid and dodge. If you decide to go to the right, you're going to fight Forge Master Damien. He's going to cast the uninterruptible Heat Wave, which does a lot of AoE damage and slows everybody down for a few seconds, making it hard to dodge all the lava pools that he keeps summoning around him. They do damage on impact and then leave puddles behind. Killing him summons Elena, who is going to try and cast Divine Judgment on your tank, which is not interruptible. It has a bunch of damage and leaves a dispellable debuff on your tank, increasing their damage taken. And after you dispel that, she's going to channel Holy Radiance for 8 seconds, which is going to do heavy AoE damage to everyone in your party. So be prepared to use defensives and heal up. It is your pick which 2 mini-bosses you want to kill. The third one you're going to have to fight with the first boss. and deal with all the abilities that we have already mentioned. For the boss fight itself, you want to focus the boss Captain Rookery, because the mini-boss that you left alive is going to disappear as soon as you kill him. The boss is going to cast Hurl Spear, which is a frontal red line that you need to avoid, although it's kinda hard to see. And he's also going to target a player with Savage Mauling. He mobilizes them and starts doing a lot of damage to them while gaining an Absorb Shield. You have to break through the shield to stop that mechanic. His tank buster is called Pierce Armor. It does a bunch of damage and it leaves a bleed on the tank, which also stacks. And every now and then he's going to try and cast Battle Cry. Make sure to interrupt that, because if it goes off, it's going to empower the mini-boss that's fighting on his side. On top of all of those mechanics, of course, you have to also manage the mechanics from the mini-boss that you've left alive. The next area introduces Ardent Paladins, which are going to cast Consecration on the ground, move out of the circle as it stays there as a puddle, and be prepared for their Sacred Toe cast, which is uninterruptible and it does heavy AoE damage to everyone around them. There's also Zealous Templars in these pools. They do a lot of single target damage to your tank and then can pop their wings to do even more damage, but this one is purgeable, so take advantage of that if you can. You have to clear the whole cathedral to summon the second boss, Baron Brownpike. You basically want to stack the whole time. His Hammers of Purity are going to summon hammers from the sky in a small circle, but then they start expanding, so you want to stack them and then run away. His Sacrificial Pyre summons a circle on the ground with orbs around it. You want to get rid of that by walking in, which removes one of the orbs, does AoE damage to everyone, and leaves a dot on the player that's soaked. You have 30 seconds to deal with this mechanic, so you can stagger them a little bit. And then his other mechanic is called Castigator Shield. He's going to target several players, do a bunch of damage at them, and summon big circles that you need to run out from, but you'll be slowed during that time, so keep that in mind. His abilities usually hit up to 3 people, but when he gets to 100% energy, he's going to cast Vindictive Rat. He summons his wings, and now his abilities hit all the players, or in the case of the Sacrificial Pyre, they're now 5 balls that you need to soak. So be prepared for that, and keep in mind there's one more mechanic. He has an interruptible cast called Burning Light. Make sure to interrupt it because it does a lot of AoE damage, it leaves dot on players, and it also heals him. So if it goes off, it's pretty much a wipe. In the last area, you're going to see all the mobs that we have encountered so far. A lot of them, with the addition of the Horizon Mages. Make sure to interrupt their Fireball Volley cast, which does a lot of AoE damage, and the rest of the time they'll be spamming Fireballs, which do single target damage. This area also has a mini-boss right in the middle called Sir Brownpike. He has a Radiant Flame aura around him that does sticking damage while he's alive to every player in your party, and his Blazing Strike is going to smack your tank and leave a dot on them. And lastly, there are several Horizon Footmans in this area. They do a burst of AoE damage once you kill them, so be careful how many you pull and how you deal with them. After all of that, you get to fight the last boss, Priory Merprey. Interrupt as many of her Holy Smites as you can, and beware of the Holy Flame mechanic, which is a big circle on the ground that you need to walk away from. She's also going to buff herself with Inner Fire for 10 seconds, increasing the holy damage that she does by 50% and radiating damage to everyone for the duration. Purify is going to target a player with a beam that is going to chase them. Be careful how you kite it because it leaves puddles behind. And when she casts Blinding Light, make sure to turn away and look away from her unless you want to take a lot of damage and get disoriented for 4 seconds. At 50% health, she jumps upstairs, gets a huge Absorb Shield, and starts radiating damage to everyone in your party. You want to get to her as quickly as possible and burst through the shield to stop the AoE damage. And while the shield is active, she summons ads that run up to the stairs. They're very scary because they do a lot of damage if they melee you. They pulse AoE around them, but they also lose 4% health every second. So slow them down, CC them, AoE them, guide them if you have to, but make sure you don't get meleeed. And if you survive that part, she's going to continue casting the mechanics from phase 1, and you have to manage them on this small platform on top of the cathedral. So, kill the boss, profit, check this channel for more Mythic Plus content in Season 2 of The War Within. I'm gonna see you there. Now get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mythic Plus guide for Darkflame Cleft in Season 2 of The War Within. Whoever designed Murozon's Rise and City of Threats is obviously still at work at Blizzard, they haven't been fired, and now we'll have to deal with all the boss and trash mechanics that they're going to throw at us in this dungeon. If the small laborers at the start melee you, they apply a stacking bleed on you, so make sure that the tank gets aggro, and be ready to CC slow and kite them if their stacks get too high. The big overseers are going to cast Wild La Loop, which is a big circle that knocks everybody back and does a bunch of damage, so move out. And their overpowering roar does AoE damage, and it also increases the damage and haste for the mobs around them, so be careful how you pull those. The Weak Lighters are going to cast Weak Lighter Bolt. Imagine that. Interrupt as many of these as you can and be on your toes with your magic dispel, as they're going to apply instant dot called Flashpoint on a random target that you want to dispel before it starts ticking off a lot of damage. The Mole Heads are going to try and cast Mole Frenzy. This enrages the nearby pack moles, so it's highly recommended you interrupt that if you can, and then the rest of the time they're gonna stay out of range and throw rocks at random targets. The first boss is the Old Waxbeard, who is going to summon the little laborers that do the stacking bleed on the targets they hit. He's also going to cast Lurking Candle Flame, which makes all of them fixate a random target. Get ready to CC slow and even kite them to reduce the damage taken. Beware of the minecarts that are going to zip through the rails. They do damage and knock back, but they also kill the small laborers if you can manage that. And of course the boss has a Rockbuster, which hits the tank hard and increases their damage taken for 6 seconds. His Reckless Charge is going to be targeted at a player, and he's going to zoom through the map, killing all the laborers on his way and doing damage, so dodge that. And when he hits something, rocks fall from the ceiling, dodge the orange swirlies, and keep in mind that they're also going to kill the laborers stuck inside. For his last trick, he's going to summon a cart full of dynamites. You have to DPS and kill it down in 20 seconds, otherwise it's going to explode and do a lot of damage. So make sure to focus that quickly and you'll be able to move on to the next part. In here you're going to see some Wandering Candles. They're going to do an AoE blast that does damage to everyone in your party, and then they're going to do Surging Flame. They explode in one place, leaving a fire puddle behind. Simply move and stay out. To summon the second boss, you have to kill a bunch of Blazing Fiends. There's many of them, but I don't know if you want to pull all of them at the same time, because they're going to try and cast Explosive Flame. You can interrupt it, but if it goes off, it does a little bit of fire AoE damage and applies a debuff to everyone, increasing their fire damage taken by 10%, and this one stacks. So don't get overwhelmed, kill all of them in order to summon Blazicon. The boss is static in the middle of the room. You always need to have someone in melee range, of course, because otherwise he just blows up and kills everybody. In the beginning of the fight, he's going to cast Dousing Breath. This is going to do AoE damage to everyone, and it's also going to extinguish all the candles around the room. Next, he's going to target players with Weak Lighter Barrage. Swirlies are going to fall from the sky. You wanna avoid them, but you also wanna drop them on top of the candles in order to light them up. You wanna light up as many as you can, because at 100% energy, he's going to cast Enkindling Inferno. This fires a frontal at each extinguished candle. It does a bunch of AoE to everyone and leaves a stacking dot. The more extinguished candles you had, the bigger the dot is going to be. The next mechanic, Extinguishing Gust, fires tornadoes at players. You need to move away, and you need to aim at least a few at lit up candles, because he's going to cast Inside Flames next, targeting all the lit up candles with swirlies on the ground that remain there for a while, so you need a patch of ground to stand on too, which means extinguish candles, but you want to hit only a couple at most with the tornadoes, because shortly after he's going to cast the Enkindling Inferno again, so you don't want to have too many unlit candles to reduce the stacks of the dot that's gonna get applied to everyone. He's then going to douse all the flames, do all the AoE damage, and the Weak Lighter Barrage, so everything starts from the beginning. Rinse and repeat until the boss dies, and yeah, good luck. After that, you have to fight a lot of Flame Tenders that are just going to be spamming firebolts at you. Interrupt as many as you can, along with 2 mini-bosses. The caster 1 is going to cast Candle Flame Bolt. Interrupt that, it does a lot of single target damage. And then he's going to cast Ceaseless Flame. This is a 4-second frontal that you need to dodge. He also has another cast called Flaming Tether. If you let this one go off, it's going to root the target and put a dot on them, but this one is magic dispellable, so that's another way to deal with it. The big guy is going to summon a bunch of swirlies on the ground that you need to avoid, and then he's going to one-hand headlock, which is a charge that stuns the target for 5 seconds and does a lot of damage to them. Get ready to use defensives and heal that person up. He also has one more mechanic called Massive Stomp. After a short channel, he swamps the ground, knocks everybody back, and does AoE damage. Kill these 2 mini-bosses and you will be at the 3rd boss, the Candle King. He summons wax statues around the room that do pulsing constant AoE damage to everyone in your party. There's 2 ways to get rid of them. For the first one, he's going to target somebody with a pickaxe throw. Make sure there's a statue between you and the boss so the statue soaks the hit. And then he's going to target 3 players with a debuff. It's a purple circle around you that does a bunch of damage, and once it expires, it destroys all the statues within. There's one more mechanic. He's going to try and cast Paranoid Mind. If that goes off, he fears a player for 4 seconds. So simply interrupt that and keep trying to destroy as many statues as you can at each iteration so you take less damage overall. After that, the design of the dungeon shines again. You have to escort a cart with a candle on top, and the light drains slowly. If it goes out, you need to run into the darkness and bring more candles to the cart to power it up. You do no damage or healing while you are in the dark, and there's gonna be ads that you need to kill along the way. The small skittering ones explode once they die in a purple circle, so stay out. And the flying corridor creepers are going to eat their corpses and empower themselves if they're around once the small ones die. They can also inflict a stacking dot on top of your tank, so if you pull way too many of those at the same time, they might be in danger. The shifting horrors are the more dangerous mobs because they're going to try and cast Drain Light. If that goes off, not only it reduces the candle on top of the card, but it also does AoE damage, so make sure to interrupt that at all cost. At some point you jump on the cart and the last boss starts chasing you. You can throw dynamite at him, so make sure to spam your 1 button because you do damage to him and that's exciting, I guess. And after you get off of the cart and you kill a few more trash packs, you'll be actually at the last boss, the Darkness. The candle from the cart is also here, so you have to stay within the light and you can pick it up or put it back down this time by using your extra action button. The first mechanic is called Shadow Blast. A player is targeted with a huge circle. They explode in 6 seconds, doing a lot of damage, so make sure to move out from everybody else and make sure you don't hit the candle because that reduces the light. The next mechanic is called Umbral Slash. This is a huge frontal that you need to dodge, and if the candle is inside, somebody needs to pick it up, move it out, and put it back down. Cold Darkness is a 6-second channel that summons ads interrupted as quickly as possible to reduce the number of ads. And then AoE and CC them down because they'll try to cast Drain Light at your candle to reduce its energy. And lastly, the boss has a 4-second channel called Eternal Darkness that does pulsing AoE damage and also reduces the candle's light significantly. You basically need to have somebody ready to run in with a new candle to refill the light, because if it hits 0, the boss puts a debuff on everyone that does AoE damage, fears them, increases their damage taken, and also reduces their haste. It lasts for 10 minutes and it stacks, so you definitely don't want this to happen. Keep your candle healthy, rinse and repeat, and once the boss reaches 55%, you win. You can also win by checking out this channel for more Mythic Plus content in Season 2 of The War Within. I'll see you there. Now get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cinderbrew Meadery Mythic Plus guide for Season 2 in The War Within. There's a lot of trash in that first room, but there's really just a few things that you need to pay attention to. The Pyromaniacs are going to try and cast Erupting Inferno. It's not interruptible, but you can CC or stun them to prevent it. And if it goes off, it puts a debuff on the target, they start doing damage around them, but this one is magic dispellable, so you can get rid of it. They're also going to try and cast Boiling Flames, which is a channel that does a lot of damage to a target, but you can actually save an interrupt for this one and prevent it this way. The Tasting Attendants are going to do a Cinderbrew toss, just move out of the circle so you don't take damage. And the Hired Muscles are going to do Volatile Cack, which splashes and puts a debuff ticking dot on everyone in your party that you need to use defenses for and heal through. That first area also has a mini boss called Chef Chewy, and you might be in a lot of trouble if you don't pull him alone because he has an aura that increases the damage of the mobs around him and it makes them immune to CC effects. He's going to cast Tenderize, which knocks everybody back and does AoE damage. And his other ability is called High Stakes. He just starts throwing around meat. Make sure you don't get hit by the circles around them because you're going to take a lot of damage and also get stunned. Clear that first room in order to get to fight the first boss, Brewmaster Aldrir. His tank buster is called Keg Smash. It knocks the target back and it also leaves puddles around him. And even more puddles are going to appear at the feet of 2 players targeted by Troll Cinderbrew. This one also leaves a 9-second dot on the 2 targets, so be prepared to heal them up, and his last mechanic is called Blazing Belch. This is just a huge fronto at a random player that you need to dodge. At 66 and 33% the boss jumps behind his counter and becomes immune to damage. You have to pick up 5 mugs in front of him and bring them to the patrons which are at the sides of the room. In this phase, they're doing pulsing AoE damage, so if you cannot move and heal at the same time, make sure to keep your party members healthy until they're distributing the drinks. After you do all 5, the boss jumps back into the fight, but now he summons tornadoes that are gonna keep chasing the players around the room. So keep kiting them, the rest of the mechanics are going to be the same as phase 1. After you kill the boss, you have 2 options. If you go left, you have to deal with the flavor scientists. They're going to throw barrels at the ground that are going to explode in 10 seconds, so make sure to DPS them down before that happens. And save an interrupt for their rejuvenating honey, as this is a heal that you don't want to go off. The big careless hobgoblins are going to target somebody with a reckless delivery. They're going to charge at them, dodge and bait them near a wall. After they hit the wall, they do a lot of AoE damage and they summon small blobs. After you kill them, they summon even more of these, and after you kill the smallies, they leave puddles behind. Also, make sure to bait the reckless charge nearby because they will not stop until they hit something, and if you send them in the wrong direction, they can pull the whole dungeon coming back. The taste testers are going to enrage themselves via spilled drink, suit if you can, and their cast called Free Samples does a lot of single target damage, so spare an interrupt for it. After you clear the room, at the end of the corridor, you get to fight the second boss, Ipa. The Spouting Stout is 8-second channel which does a lot of AoE damage and a lot of swirlies on the ground that you need to keep dodging while healing your party members. After this is over, few small adds are summoned and they're going to try and reach the boss. CC, slow them down, kite them and kill them as quickly as possible because if they succeed, the boss gets a huge shield and they do AoE damage. Burning Fermentation is going to target 2 random players and mark them with a dot, which is magic dispellable, so get rid of one of them quickly, heal the other person until your dispel is back up, and then dispel them as well. The last mechanic is Bottom's Uppercut, which is a tank buster that also knocks back, but as long as you ensure that no adds ever reach the boss, you should be good to go to the other side from that first area. Here you have to fight the Bee Wranglers, which are going to cast Beezooka at you. This is a frontal that does damage and knocks back the first person in the red line. Hopefully, your tank. Also make sure to spare an interrupt for their Bestial Rat, which enrages the nearby bees if it goes off. And the bees themselves are going to jump at random people, leave bleeds on them, and once they're about to die, they're going to cast Final Sting, which will do a bunch of damage to your tank. The big honey harvesters are going to cast Swarming Surprise. That does AoE damage to everyone and also puts a debuff on them, increasing the damage taken from subsequent casts, so burst them down as quickly as possible. And make sure to stay out of their Beewax cast, which is a big circle around them that does damage and also stuns. The Royal Jelly Purveyors are going to do Rain of Honey, which is a lot of circles on the ground that you need to simply dodge to avoid damage, and they also have a cast called Honey Volley that you want to interrupt to prevent AoE damage to your whole party. Some of the packs also have the small bee-lets that apply a stacking dot on your target, usually the tank. Luckily, magic dispellable, so make sure you don't let the stacks go too high. Clearing the hallways on this side is going to lead you to the third boss, Bank Buzzbee. She's occasionally going to summon 3 barrels around the room which attract ravenous Cinderbees. These ads are going to put stacking bleeds on people, so you want to CC them and AoE them down as quickly as possible to get rid of them. And once you get them down to 1%, instead of dying, they now become mounts that the players can use and aim at the barrels, pressing their one button and triggering a charge that is going to destroy the barrels. One charge can destroy multiple barrels if you aim it correctly, and you want to keep getting rid of the barrels so you don't get overwhelmed by the ads. Honey Marinade is applied to the tank. This is a circle that explodes for a bunch of damage and leaves a puddle on the ground, so you want to stack those close to the wall. And keep the ads away from them because they get healed and buffed if they stay on top of them. The last mechanic is Fluttering Wing. This is a 2-second channel that pushes everyone back and does a lot of AoE damage, so be prepared for that. And if you don't get overwhelmed by ads and you keep killing the barrels, you should be able to get out of this wing. Back in the first area, you can fly up to find 4 Yes Men mobs, which are going to charge at different players. Make sure to dodge the circles. And if you kill one of them, the others get healed back to full and get a damage buff, so you have to basically DPS them down one by one. The last boss is Goldie Baron Bottom, who's going to summon a lot of bombs in the room. 4 of them are big barrels that put a stacking 6-second dot on players once you destroy them, so you want to manage very carefully how you're going to blow them up. Both the big and the small bombs are going to throw out waves of lava after you destroy them, so always be ready to dodge those, as there's gonna be plenty of them. There's 2 main ways to destroy the bombs. Cash Cannon is a frontal aimed at the tank. You wanna dodge it, but all the barrels caught in the fire are going to explode. There's gonna be the total of 3 tank frontals by the time your timer expires for you to destroy the big barrels. So you can let the tank handle it alone, but if you wanna help, the boss is going to target 2 players with fire circles. All the barrels caught inside are going to explode. The players are going to take a bunch of damage and yet another 6-second, this time magic dispellable dot. At 100% energy, the boss jumps into the middle and casts Let It Hail. This is heavy AoE damage and it also explodes all remaining barrels in the arena, so if you have some of the big ones left, they're actually going to add to the AoE by the stacking dot as well. So you have to manage destroying the 4 barrels before she gets to that last phase, hopefully not all at once. And from here on, it's rinse and repeat until you kill the boss. So that will be all for the Cinderbrew Meadery Mythic Plus guide. Check out the rest of the dungeon guides on this channel. I'll see you guys there. Now get out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Operation Floodgate Mythic Plus dungeon guide for Season 2 in the War Within. We'll be going through the most important boss and trash mechanics in order for you to finish the dungeon successfully, and we're gonna start with one of the mobs at the start, the Shreddinator. Once he starts casting Shreddation, get ready to move as soul blades are going to appear from the ground and mess you up if you stay on top of them. And his other ability is Flamethrower, which is a frontal that he spins around, so get ready to dodge that as well. The little drone snipers are going to shoot at players randomly inflicting damage, but make sure to interrupt their trick shot because that does more damage and hits multiple targets. Then you have the Venture Cost Surveyors who also do random damage to different targets, and they also have an interruptible cast, the Surveying Beam, which is a channel and does heavy damage to a player if it's not interrupted. You also encounter small loader bots that wind up and start doing damage around them, but this one you can actually stun. Next, you see some architects that stay up on a platform that you need to kill in order to remove a buff from them, and they'll be randomly shooting nail guns at people that leave a bleed and root them at place. If you can remove the root, you remove the bleed. If you cannot, you have to heal through it. The demolitionists are going to fire a lot of fire circles on the ground that you need to simply dodge, then they're going to try to reload, and if you don't interrupt it, more fire circles. Next we have the Blood Warpers. Those are very scary. They're going to cast Blood Blast into random targets, interrupt as many of these as you can, and once they start channeling Warp Blood, be ready to pop defensives and healing cooldowns, as this is very heavy AoE damage that also puts healing absorb shields on the players. In the meantime, the Dark Fuse Inspectors are going to jump behind people and cast a frontal that you need to dodge, while the Dark Fuse Soldiers are going to stack a Shadow Dot on your tank, which luckily is dispellable. Some of the packs also have hyenas inside of them. They have a cast. If you let this cast go off, their attacks now start to auto-heal them, so make sure to interrupt it. The first boss is Big Mama, and she has 4 ads flying around her. They're going to charge a player and leave a bunch of swirlies on the ground. Just dodge those and make sure to interrupt them if they start casting, because they'll be doing a pulsing AoE damage. The boss is also going to target a player and shoot a big circle that you need to dodge, as it's going to do damage, push you back and silence you. And that's pretty much it until you manage to kill all 4 ads. At this point, the boss starts a jump start, which does heavy AoE damage to everyone in your party, but he's also taking 200% increased damage. This continues for 12 seconds, then the boss leaves a huge area denial puddle on the ground, summons 4 new ads, and everything continues from the start. Rinse and repeat until you manage to kill it. After that, you need to cross the river to reach the second boss, and you can do it on foot, or you can use the paragliders on top of the platform after the first boss. The trash packs on the other side of the river include the same mobs, just in different combinations. However, there are a few new mobs in the river that you can pull either before or after the second boss. There are bombshell crabs, which explode and do AoE damage after you kill them. It's not a lot, but the effect stacks, so if you pull way too many and you kill them at the same time, you can potentially wipe. And then you have the divers. They'll try to harpoon people, leaving a nasty bleed on them, and they're also going to drop bombs on the ground. Don't step on those. And make sure to interrupt the harpoons. The second boss is a 2-target fight. The small lass is randomly going to target people, shoot them, so you have to heal them up, and then she also has a multiple direction frontal that you need to dodge. After she jumps away and casts Big Bada Boom, she throws away 5 bombs that you need to kill in the next 30 seconds. She's also going to throw a dot on a player, a debuff that you can dispel, and doing so damages the player, throws them into the air, but also destroys all the bombs in a small circle around them. At the same time, the big dude is going to charge at players, destroying everything on its path, including the bombs, and of course doing damage if you get caught. You wanna bait those towards the bombs so you destroy them, while dodging all the circles that the little dude keeps trolling at you. Before the bombs expire, you get another debuff, so you can dispel that in order to destroy the last bombs, and if you fail to do so, they explode and do a lot of AoE damage, which is stacking and leaving a dot on all the players. When the big dude is not charging, he does a wallop, which does AoE damage around him, knocking players up in 5 yards range. So keep your distance, and then you have to kill both of these at the same time. They do not share health, but if you kill one of them, the other one does enrage, so try to evenly split your damage. After you kill those 2 bosses and you click on the 5 stockpiles which are spread all over that first area, you have to go down the river and kill all the disturbed chaos there in order to summon the 3rd boss. These mobs have a channel that does a ton of damage that you can stun, and they also have a cast that you wanna interrupt. If you fail to do so, they put a hot healing effect on themselves. The 3rd boss is Swamp Face. He has a tank buster that leaves a healing absorb shield on your tank. And he also connects players with vines. If you move too far away from your friend, you get yoinked back. He has a huge frontal that you need to dodge, of course, moving in pairs with your connected friends. And you can agree before the boss in what direction you're going to move once the frontal happens. Then you can only hope that players can distinguish left from right, but maybe that's too much to ask for. The boss then stomps the ground, doing AoE damage and summoning roots around him. Shortly after, the roots explode and spit out waves all over the place that you keep dodging while being connected to your friend. And that's pretty much it. All that keeps repeating until you manage to defeat him. After that, you get to fight a mini-boss called Bubbles, who summons bubbles around. Just dodge those, and then the backlash does heavy AoE damage that leaves dot on all the players. Be ready to pop defensives and healing cooldowns here. To make it even more fun, there's also a frontal that you need to dodge. The hallway after that has some of the old mobs that we already mentioned, but there's also electricians. They're gonna spam lightning bolts at you, just interrupt those. And be ready to dispel their overcharged dot, because not only does damage, but also stuns the target if you do not dispel it. And then you have the jump starters. Those do big AoE damage and then throw a bunch of swirlies on the ground that you need to dodge, as well as a tank buster, so enjoy having to pull 2 of those at the same time. Or not. If you survive all of that, you are at the last boss, Gizo Gigazap. Turbocharge fires frontals at all directions repeatedly while doing heavy AoE damage to your party, so good luck healing and moving at the same time. Yet again. And if you didn't have enough dodging, what follows is a bunch of swirlies on the ground. Dodge those, the orange ones are going to disappear, the blue ones are going to leave puddles on the ground. The boss then marks 2 players with Giga Zaps. Blue circles around the players, make sure to not overlap those because they explode for a bunch of damage and leave a nasty dot on both of those targets. After that, the boss summons sparks that chase each of the players. You have to kite those into one of the blue puddles, but each puddle can only soak 1 spark, so make sure you're distributing those evenly. The boss also has a tank buster called Thunder Punch. It leaves a dot on the target and knocks them back, so be careful where you're going. And these mechanics keep repeating until you die, or the boss dies. In any case, that will be the end of the dungeon. Make sure to subscribe to this channel for more Mythic Plus content in Season 2 of The War Within. I'll see you there. Now get out of here.